Get on.
Go Big 12, go big home. I'm Brandon Shanahan, joined as always by broadcasting legend Drew Russell. Drew Russell from the Twin Cities. What's going on, pal?
Beautiful weather up here today, Brandon. 80 and sunny over the weekend, 70s and sunny. Last Friday, 65 and sunny. Ideal.
Unbelievable.
Gorgeous August weather. Zero complaints on my end.
Unbelievable. Well, great stuff. I mean, we got a lot to get into. AP poll got released today. We're doing our Big 12 fantasy draft now that we're in fantasy football season. Also, while we're in the midst of our fantasy draft, wanted to pull that up here, see how we're cooking. I mean, we're getting in the dog days here in the teen round. So we got the doctor's office here. I mean, just an unimaginable run on wide receivers. Jaden
Oh,
Daniels, Nico
shoot. I'm
Collins,
picking right now. Oh,
and you're on
I
the
got work
clock.
to do, Brandon.
I mean, we got the
I got work.
get the
Okay, we're about
live.
to see a pick live.
Oh man, unreal.
Yeah, all right, I got to look at this. I'm going to be honest with you, Brandon. I really love my draft. I lost my first guy I was hoping to target today for running back, Mozart. I can't believe got taken for me 2 picks before. I really thought he was going to drop to me. I had such high hopes. Just to get an experienced running back and a very average RB from at that. So, all right, let's take a look at what we got. All right.
Let's see. I gotta say, Chuba Hubbard. I think that's how you say his name. That's a good pick. I was hoping.
Yeah. Oklahoma State legend.
Of course.
Oklahoma State legend. Man, this is a tough call. I'm gonna look at our little roster quick. This isn't fun, Brandon. So many difficult. Well, it's a tough decision, Brandon. I'm going Dotson.
That's a good one. I had him on my radar too.
He's an interesting
him on
pick
my radar.
because Samuel left. He went to Buffalo. So Scary Terry's a clear number 1 wide receiver. No one's going to debate that. I love Scary Terry. But
love Scary Terry.
Dotson, this is his chance.
Opportunity
you could take. Boy, there's some interesting names on that list, I must say.
Big 12 TCU legend Keandre Miller's still there. I mean, it looks like he's already battling injuries, so that makes me nervous. A couple of rookies still on the board with Roman Wilson and Marshawn Lloyd, especially at this point in the draft, because I feel like most of these guys at this point in the draft, I mean, you kind of got to prepare for these guys to sit on the bench the whole year, which is why I may not look at a guy like DeAndre Hopkins, who's I think he's going to be more productive this year than he was last year, just with the updated offense, and hopefully Will Levi's is serviceable for him. But tough spot.
But these are you can find some gems though. This is where bargain hunting. Can you find a diamond in the rough? And some of these older guys still have some legit talent that can produce immediately. There's going to be some rookies that might be taken hyper late, and you look back and you're like, gee, what was I thinking? Or what was everybody thinking to let this guy drop to whatever round? We're in round 14 now. Again, for most of these, everybody's team is relatively set now. Starters are set. Now it's just that bargain hunting.
Yeah, now it's about just depth and taking flyers on guys. I was really hoping.
I like your team though, Brandon. You have a good mix of youth and experience.
Absolutely.
I really like your team.
Really like where we're going here because we went. I mean, wide receiver, we're like, we got to get bona fide superstars, Lamb, Nakua, Ayuk right off the bat. And then running backs, and we're pretty much on the same page with how we feel about running backs. I went back-to-back rookie running backs there in the 7th and the 6th round with Brooks and Benson. Love those picks. Wish Brooks was a little bit more healthy, but I think he'll bounce back. I think getting a couple of guys who, a couple of vets, Javonte Williams, James Conner. Especially, I love James Conner falling there because, the only thing that's going to keep Trey Benson from popping off this year is that he's going to have to share snaps with James Conner. That problem solved. Then, I love QB1 and Joe Burrow. Not, so about QB2 and Baker, but, taking a flyer on Justin Fields, I'm pretty happy with that. And I'm really happy with that because at that 11-5 spot, I was like, oh man, I wonder if I should take Justin Fields or if I should, take a flyer on Jamison Williams. I got them both. Didn't matter. Worked out perfectly that way.
Yeah. It is
Ah,
interesting with, Jamison Williams is a terrific talent. I was telling you, I had him in a different league. I like him a lot. And I can't lie to you, Brandon, I love this team. Like, I don't even know if I'll ever win a championship, but like, the
vibes
wide
are good.
receivers are great. The vibes are very nice on this team. When you get I can't believe I have Justin Jefferson and Marvin Harrison Jr. Never in my life did I think that would happen. Um, Nico Collins is a great WR3. If Rashee Rice cannot, always hurt the law, like this is a guy that can be a clear, at worst, WR2 and at times WR1 for a Chiefs offense that does know how to manufacture yards and points historically. I love my tight ends, Brandon. Kyle Pitts,
I
Sanat
love the
out of
tight end room.
K-State. Though that's a great tip duo. I am ecstatic. I can't believe Pitts fell that far. I think he's still a good talent. I just think they didn't utilize him correctly
Yeah.
last couple of years. I think there's a reason he was a top 10 pick. So, I mean, it's there. And then a very young QB room. We're going to see how it goes. I mean, Daniels, McCarthy, and Levis. That is all 2 first-year guys and 1 second-year guy. Maybe we'll add a 4th eventually. We'll see. But, running backs, I'm not going to lie to you. Young, Corum, Charbonnet, and then, Sheba Hubbard. It's a room that is going to be, bottom 3 in the league, could be worse in the league, and that's fine. I kind of knew that going in. So I'll address that as needed throughout the season. We'll just see. We'll see kind of how we'll go 4 to 6 weeks go, and then I can adjust as need be.
Yeah. Yep. I think we're in a good spot. Draft is going pretty smoothly. I think we're on pace to get there about a week with a week left to kill. So, fill in some extra gaps between now and then. I got a couple of I got a couple of flyers that I want to take. I don't want to share too much, but you know what's
I
funny
know.
is Tom Brady has a higher ADP than Jimmy Garoppolo.
No, there's no way.
You
Is that
believe it?
really?
Yeah, we got to look it up here.
Jimmy. Jimmy. No,
And
Jimmy
actually,
Garoppolo is.
it's not
I mean,
just
Jimmy
Jimmy, I
Garoppolo
think.
starting a Super Bowl. Oh, that's brutal. You're telling me if you scroll down or just search, you just search, I think, find a player, you just type in Brady. Oh, there he
Yeah,
is,
there's
Thomas.
Brady and Garoppolo ahead of Sam
Oh,
Hartman.
no.
I mean, Stetson Bennett at 370 seems high after his outstanding performance. But, I mean, at least these
Yeah, he
guys are
played
on
well.
teams.
Yeah. I'm just, he played well. No, it's an exciting, this is going to be a fascinating league. It's been fascinating to see how this draft board has played out, especially with a lot of first timers. I think good teams. I don't know if there's a bad team. I'm not going to rip anybody's team. I'm not that mean. I'm happy with
It's
mine
so
though. Like I
tough. Yeah,
really am. I always complain about my drafts, and this I'm like, I'm good, and that means I'm gonna have a terrible year because
of course.
that's my luck. Because the drafts I love, of course, are the ones that always underperform. So that's how, and then the ones I hate play well. So that's how it always works for me, Brandon.
Oh man, it sounds like we got another pick in. DeAndre Hopkins went
Oh,
to Dreamweaver, so we might get two live picks here. So
all
we've
right. I
got
think you're up. Here
we're
we
on the
go.
clock here. Let me
Brandon
see
Shanahan
here.
on the clock.
Oh man, so this
Do-do-do-do-do-do.
you know
Do-do-do-do-do-do.
let's see. We need a tight end. I don't like any of these tight ends.
Yeah, I mean
Don't
it's
like any of these tight
slimmer
ends.
pickings at this point. You go arc, yeah. No, there's plenty of options.
Yeah, I think so. So it's really between Marshawn Lloyd and Roman Wilson. I mean, either of those guys we're just taking a flyer on. Because here we are drafting That doesn't tell me, but we're in the 160, so I mean we're getting good value on those guys. Um, I really don't have a whole lot of faith in Josh Jacobs to do a whole lot for Green Bay. Um, and frankly,
Mm.
I don't think the Packers have great confidence in him either. Hamstring in the debut's not great, but
Mm.
again, I mean, this is probably a guy that's going to sit on the bench for the whole year. That's
No, and
yeah.
that's true. Like, what is the situation? That's part of it all.
Then Roman Wilson. I'm trying to think of who's ahead of him. I know we got George Pickens, but
Yeah,
who else is,
I
is
mean
ahead
that
of
Steelers wide receiver room is not big time. Like, there's not huge talent, so he might have chances.
Pickens?
I guess you
Yeah, I
can
mean
see
he's. mm,
his for the taking. Pickens is a clear one, but after that, kid could ball out. He could ball out like J.J. McCarthy, a Michigan legend.
Absolutely, absolutely. Um, I think we're going to take the running back. I mean, we're just taking flyers on running backs, to be honest.
No, I mean
Um,
that's kind of what it breaks down to. I mean that's the thing. I mean, how many like 26? How many rounds?
yeah, 26 rounds.
So I mean, if this, I mean, these next what 10 to 13 picks range, like, I mean, it's all gambles. It's like going to the craps table.
I love the
You just
craps table
roll.
drills.
You
You
just
know that.
roll and dice. No, everybody, a lot of people I know they enjoy like, they enjoy blackjack. Blackjack's a great game. Poker is a great game. I'm not disputing any of that, but you have to think, Brandon. You know, craps you don't have to think too much. You just whatever.
Well,
Roulette you don't have to think at all. You just pick your
yeah.
numbers.
Well,
I
the thing
love
with
roulette.
craps is that once you get your system, then it's muscle memory, and that's how you're supposed to play it. A lot of people try to get crazy, throwing out dollar yos, trying to catch the dice. You're not going to catch the dice all night, so you just gotta find your system, stick with it, and try to decrease the house odds as much as possible. I mean, I got a good enough system. One time I don't remember this, but I was told that I was taken to a casino, blackout drunk, and I was playing craps. The strategy was dialed in. I couldn't remember, but they were like, "Oh yeah, you're doing this and this and this." Like that's the Shanahan method
The Shanahan method.
in the bones.
No, I mean, there's just some things you just know how to do. No, that's the thing with the roulette wheel. I'm just like, put it all on red.
Easy breezy.
You know, we love Big Red. So
Oh,
that's
big
that's
red.
just how it is, Brandon. I support. I say I'm not all anti Huskers. I always support the Huskers every Thanksgiving week every year.
Oh
You
man, it's
can
the
you
best.
can count on that. You can count on that for sure. So no, but the college football season, Brandon, you mentioned it, polls out today. Let's just break down the top 25. Multiple Big 12 teams in it, and obviously a lot of SEC flavor towards the top, Big 10 flavor towards the top. I was going to say some Pac-12 flavor, but that doesn't exist anymore. So um, quite a
It's all Big
list.
12 pretty
I mean,
much.
when we look at it.
Yeah, five teams from the Big 12. Utah at 12, most notably. Then Oklahoma State at 17, Kansas State at 18, Arizona at 21. Weird that they're a Big 12 team, but Arizona at 21, Kansas at 23, and then a couple others receiving votes being Iowa State, the most noteworthy. I don't know who's voting for Washington to be in the top 25. That one gets past me. But West Virginia also received some votes, and then Colorado received a single vote. So Big
Baby
12
Dion.
probably more representative than I had anticipated. And Utah coming in at 12 is probably also higher than I anticipated.
Mm-hmm.
I was really gearing up for the AP to really start to separate out the Big Ten and the SEC from the rest of reality and the Big 12 and the ACC. But I mean, even top to bottom outside of the Big 12, I kind of like how this falls. There's a couple of little things I don't. I like Penn State over Notre Dame. I'm very much not high on Michigan in the top 10, but I
Mm-hmm.
get it. Um, But I mean, other than that, I don't know what we're doing with Texas A&M. I don't see the vision there. But other than that, I like how this is shaped up.
Yeah, I mean, these polls are, historically, Brandon, honestly, if it wasn't for, I mean, they put these polls together, I think, in the preseason for more TV ratings. It helps
For
if you have
sure.
a week one game where you have like a top 15 matchup, even though these two teams haven't played and it's just sheer hype. But, uh, I mean, no one's going to hate Georgia at one. Georgia's a powerhouse right now. Ohio State two, Oregon three. I really don't have a problem with the top five. Oregon three, Texas four, Bama five. Even the next five, it's. I know Michigan's getting a lot of hate. They've lost some big players, and I think they are going to take a step back. I think they can be top 25 throughout the season, but I don't know if they're nine. But it is what it is. But for the Big 12 specifically, I think the interesting thing to keep an eye on, Brandon, is what team can potentially jump if they get out to a hot start. Let's just talk in the top 25. So Utah at 12, Oklahoma State at 17, K-State 18, Kansas at 22, Arizona at 21. Who can get out to a hot start and potentially jump into the top 10? I think is something to keep an eye on. Utah obviously is going to be a prime candidate if they can get out to some big wins quick, that they could jump out to be a top 10 team if a couple of those top 10 teams lose. And then what are those other ones receiving votes? Iowa State, West Virginia, Colorado. If they can get out to hot starts, can they crack in the top 25 as well? And I think especially for a 12-team college football playoff, a Big 12 can have at least one representative. That's guaranteed.
That's
They
right.
want to put themselves hopefully in a good position when that comes around. So, but I think who can jump into that top 10 and solidify themselves the first, well, I'll say 4 to 6 games, just like fantasy football, 4 to 6 games again. Who can kind of solidify themselves, get out to a 6-0 start, 5-1 start, and start to make some people say, okay, this team has some serious potential.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, I'm looking at the schedules of the top three in Utah, Oklahoma State, and Kansas State, so just because they're the closest to the top 10 already. And boy, they have some real front-loaded schedules, and it's all kind of intertwined. But with Utah, Southern Utah, Baylor at Utah State, at Oklahoma State, and then a game against Arizona, all before October. Then Kansas State's at Tulane. That one's gonna. Tulane got some votes. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Arizona at BYU, Oklahoma State, all before October. Oklahoma State, South Dakota State. Watch out, Cowboys. Number two team in the FCS polls.
Yeah.
And then hosting the Woo Pig Sooie in
Ooh.
Arkansas, hosting the Hogs
Yep.
at Tulsa, Utah, Kansas State, all before October. So, I mean, whoever kind of comes out of those gauntlets with the most success, they're going to pick up a couple of ranked wins along the way. And they're going to really solidify themselves. Of course, I think Utah has the best chance to get into the top 10 after that stretch just because they're
Mm-hmm.
already knocking on the doorstep. But I think if either of those three teams have a strong showing in September, I mean, the world's their oyster. They're in control after that point.
Oh yeah. Well, and not to mention too, I mean, we talk about the guaranteed one spot for the Big 12. It'd be great, clearly, to get another at large in, maybe multiple at large in. And I don't want to bite off more than we can chew, but that'd be a significant win for the Big 12, considering, right now, like, let's just say this is the top 12 teams. I know there's certain, like the smaller conferences get their bid and all that. But for the Big 12 specifically, there'd be nobody that makes that large bid right now based on this poll. Even Utah wouldn't make it just based on auto
Right.
bids for conference champions. Who can find a way to, even if they don't win the conference, still find a way to be an at-large team? Is that possible for the Big 12? How will the voters look at that? How will I mean, there's a lot of interesting questions because we're diving into a world of unknown in the college football era of 2024, where hard to believe just 11 years ago, Brandon, people were going nuts for a 14 playoff and said, finally, we've got some life and the committee's great. And it's turned into this just train wreck, especially the last, I'll just say since the beginning of COVID. Let's just start 2020. That's just a simple timeline for everybody. Uh, what is the next step? How does the Big 12 find programs? Because oftentimes I look at those top 10, Brandon, none of those are historic programs. Georgia, historic, well known. Ohio State, no question. Oregon's pretty well known. Texas, historic. Alabama, historic. Ole Miss, I'm going to say no. They've actually historically been pretty bad considering, but they're good under Lane Kiffin. Notre Dame's historic. Penn State's historic. Michigan's historic. Florida State's historic. So 7 bona fide historic programs. I'll say 8 with Georgia. Oregon's pretty good, close to historic, but maybe not fully there. And then Ole Miss is really one that's non-historic. Can Big 12 find a way to find those historic programs coming up, or will that come through potentially in the coming months or whenever? If there is a merger for the ACC, would there be that? And is that how they acquire? That's going to be something I keep an eye on. Maybe kind of an overarching theme of the 2024 season.
Yeah, it's interesting because the conversation has shifted dramatically for the Big Ten and the SEC as far as what they need for this season. Because now you're looking at teams with 1 or 2 losses definitely getting in from those 2 conferences. And I mean, I've even heard folks throw out the fact that like if Florida goes 9-3, they should make it with their schedule. And really, the conversation like that hasn't changed for the Big 12. You still have to be pretty close to perfect to get that auto bid in, and of course the conference champion gets in. But really, I mean, the path for these guys to get in on an auto bid, 10 wins minimum, 11 wins probably gets you there. Even if you're not the champion or don't make the championship, 11 feels like a good number still, which is, I mean, pretty close to perfect. And in this conference as deep as this, it gets real muddy. But what I think that we are going to see throughout college football, and we'll see how much of this trickles down to the ACC and the Big 12, is that the thing with the 14 playoff, and why I'm so happy that we move very quickly away from it, is that the gap between playoff contenders and not playoff contenders drew dramatically. I mean, Georgia, Ohio State, Oregon, so, but they were really trending right there. Alabama, Michigan towards the end, Clemson. I mean, those are really the teams that you saw on a year in year out basis, and that was really it. And now we're in a space where all these teams can hang that CFP banner and have an opportunity to compete for a national championship, have an opportunity to make a run like TCU did to the national championship. And I think schools that couldn't put together perfect seasons, but had really good ones. Utah, Kansas State, Oklahoma State. I mean, those are teams that are in real positions. If they can, find a way to get to Arlington in December and get a win in Jerry's World, I mean, you're in. That's it. Or if you win 11 games, you're in. That's it. So I think we're going to start to see that kind of spread out. I mean, the Big 12 is going to, and here's what I'm interested to see is what's going to be more valuable, getting multiple teams in or having like 1 or 2 teams get in, but having deeper success. And I'll be curious to see where the Big 12 is, because I don't think that they're going to have great opportunities to get a bunch of teams in. So those teams that do get in really have to put on a show for the conference to gain any respect. Because now, I mean, once we go to the 14 team, the chips are literally stacked against them as far as like getting teams into the playoff. The structure is competitively unbalanced, and the Big 12 is getting the short end of the stick there with the ACC. But I mean, if you get some teams who make a big run in these tough playoffs, I mean, that's goes a long way.
You make a great point on the deep runs in the college football playoff, and we're not even remotely there yet. That's a December conversation. That's a future Drew and Brandon problem. But it is fascinating. The NCAA basketball tournament is the exact same way. Like, a conference can be great during a regular season, and then the postseason play happens, and they're just teams that you think are good falter. The Big Ten is a great example in basketball that they've always viewed themselves for the toughest conference in the country. You won't night in, night out. It's difficult. They haven't had a champion in the Big Ten for basketball, men's basketball, since 2000, which is crazy. I mean, they have some good teams in the Big Ten. And I think for the Big 12, look, the SEC has proven themselves. They've got powers. They have teams that are going to win in the college football playoff. Georgia and Alabama alone carry them, and that's before you talk about LSU and other teams. Same with the Big Ten. I mean, the defending champion Michigan's there. That's the definition of Big Ten football at times is Michigan football. Ohio State has clearly been there. New brands in Oregon have been there. So they don't have to prove themselves. Like, I go to those two conferences and they might just, off their laurels of everything, get those bonus bids. The Big 12 doesn't have that ability. They don't have those historic programs. So whether it's one team or multiple teams, you're right, Brandon. How do they represent the conference come the college football playoff? And we've talked about how important non-conference schedules are. That doesn't need to be said. But non-conference is major for the Big 12 this year. Like, I think more than maybe historically, because teams need to win. We need some big fish come October and November when conference play is in full swing and have these teams beef up resumes. And there's going to be opportunities for a lot of these teams to take on, you mentioned Oklahoma State taking on Arkansas. Iowa State's going to take on Iowa. I'll probably have a full list for you next week. It will be interesting to see if the big, I mean, you might be looking at now. I mean, it's just interesting. That's all.
Yeah, we got West Virginia hosting Penn State. It's funny. There's a couple of weird ones like Arizona's got Kansas State, but it's a non-conference game. So I mean, technically, it is what it is. TCU has new ACC power, SMU. Kansas goes to Illinois. Texas Tech goes to Washington State. So, I mean, there's plenty of opportunities. Baylor goes to Utah in the non-conference. Silly stuff. But, I mean, there's a lot of opportunities for them to take. And it's not like they're playing Ohio State's and Georgia's. These are all winnable games.
Yes. Very winnable games, Brandon. And you and I talked about it in June and July, and we'll make it clear once again. What a chance for every one of these teams to build itself into a really respectable power, not just within the conference, but maybe even on a national level as well. Recruiting's not going to be easy because players are going to want to play in the SEC and Big Ten. A lot of them will. They'll say we chose this school because they want to play in those two conferences. And I get that, but the Big 12 has a serious opportunity to say, hey, Big 12 football is no joke either, and they got a little bit of everything in the Big 12 now. It used to be, hey, this is an all-offense conference, a lot of shootouts, not much defense. That's not the case anymore. You get a lot of various brands with the new schools. You have a lot of various brands just across the board. I think it's the most intriguing conference in college football, and I know I'll get some hate since, the SEC's pretty loaded and interesting, and Big Ten's pretty loaded and interesting. Big 12 is just interesting to me because I'll use the old Iowa slogan before they changed it to the monstrosity it is now. It's fields of opportunity for all these schools. What a chance.
That's such a better state slogan than whatever they ended up
God.
on.
Freedom to flourish. Freedom to flourish is the new one, Brandon. I was ticked. That's why I had to leave the state. That's the reason right there.
That's it.
Freedom to flourish. They kept it fields of opportunity. I would have never left Dallas County.
That's right.
But that's life. So, no, but I mean, it is a fascinating conference this year. And I don't like the unbalanced scheduling, but that's every conference right now.
That's just part of the deal.
Just part of the deal. I don't like it, but it's part of the deal. But boy, there's some chances. Utah is going to be very interesting to watch. Oklahoma State's interesting to watch because they've struggled in non-conference last few years, Brandon. But boy, if they can get out to a hot start, that's a 10-11 win team. Gundy can take them to the playoff.
It's so funny to talk about Oklahoma State because I think when you take a step back and I mean we're in the thick of the Big 12 from where we sit. But I think if you're not in as much of a Big 12 sicko as we are, the story of this conference is going to be the great quarterback play. Cam Rising, I mean, you would think that he's an NFL guy. He might be too old by the time that he leaves Utah. Shedeur Sanders, people say he's a first-round pick. Noah Fafita is a superstar. Then you even have guys like Rocco Beck and Josh Hoover, who Garrett Green, who are now experienced young guys who, I mean, would be a top 5 quarterback if they went to the Big Ten. But so I think the story of this conference is going to be the outstanding quarterback play. And then you have a team like Oklahoma State who they're going to be limited at quarterback with Alan Bowman. Love me the Bow show, but let's call a spade, limited compared to those other names that I had brought up. So it's interesting that you have those teams. Avery Johnson's, a blooming superstar, in that kind of big three mix, and then you have 75-year-old Alan Bowman leading his team to Arlington.
75-year-old Alan Bohm. Yeah, he should be going to like a retirement community.
You
You
would
feel like he's
think.
been around long enough. It kind of feels like it. But that's college football at its finest. It's just the unpredictability of it all. And I'm just blown away. I mean, half the conference, Brandon, 5 ranked teams, 3 receiving votes. That's half the conference is getting some recognition from the 8 people. That's good.
That's
That's a
good. That's a good place to
good
be.
sign. That's a good place to be. And Arizona's an interesting one at 21 because they've lost some talent, but they got a great quarterback still around, and that's huge. Kansas, I'm curious what they can keep building. I'm curious what Iowa State can do. I love where Iowa State's sitting. 9 starters back on offense and defense, and they've got the number 25 team in the country in the Team Out East Week 2 on CBS. And I sent you a little photo over the weekend, Brandon, regarding a little practice game regarding that Team Out East, and they're starting
Oh my
quarterback
gosh.
Cade McNamara. I was
It's
very pleased with
amazing.
that stat line personally.
It's amazing how Cade McNamara, 4-star recruit, top 10 quarterback in his class, won the starting job at Michigan at a very young age. Big Ten champion Cade McNamara. All he has to do is go to Iowa to totally derail any sense of any success. I mean, holy smokes, what a bad call by him. You hate to see it for the young man, but boy, if somebody had just been like, hey man, maybe not Iowa, maybe anywhere else, and you'll be in such a better shape. And like I heard, I hear chirping from Iowa fans all the time, but last year it was a big part of it because he went down, early in the season. They had to give it off to Deacon Hill, who's now, in a quarterback battle at Utah Tech, not Utah State, Utah, technology or whatever that school is. But Cade McNamara
Yeah,
stunk
yeah.
before then. 1 touchdown, 4 interceptions. And that 1 touchdown, the receiver was wide open. It's hard to give him any credit for that, but outstanding stuff. Boy, but here's the problem: is that the football gods, they have blessed Iowa so much over the last several years. I mean, they got to catch up eventually. They got to the clock's got to strike midnight, and they got to find ways to lose games that they deserve to lose because they're not good.
You know what's one of the saddest storylines of this season, Brandon, is we don't have the road to 325 for Brian Ferentz.
That was perfect,
Um,
and it's so funny because they still didn't come close.
Not
That's
even
like
close.
such that I think that mark would have been good for like 70th best in the country. Not even close. By
I
October, it
personally am
wasn't
gonna
even all
miss
that
that,
fun because we knew that they weren't going to hit it.
man. I just remember. I don't know if you've ever seen. You've watched The Price Is Right probably
That's
at least
right.
once in your life. Okay, so there's that. One of my favorite games is the cliff game. That when the cliff guy goes up the chute, you have to get the price within. So somebody put that actually together for Brian Ferentz. They put together like the Brian Ferentz 325, and if he hit the flag, go over, and they win. And it was just hysterical to see him not even like get halfway up the board. Like they got to halfway, and that was it. That's all the Hawkeye offense had last year.
My favorite
It,
time
it was
is
really a glorious era.
is
Man,
not
it
once,
was
not twice,
special.
but 3 different times they had to update that graphic or that animation, and they didn't have to move them because they scored 0 points. That happened 3 times last year, by the way. Unreal.
It was a great time. I just cracked up during the bowl game when Brian Ferentz said, "This is my last game," and like they panned to him, like I think it was on game day, just college game day, and they're like, "There's Brian Ferentz, boy, he's been a warrior just through all this. He's like kissing his wife, hugging his kids." I'm like, this man makes 7 figures a year. His dad is set for life. Like,
Yeah, I
don't
mean
let's not put
it's
on
not
a
a sad
pity
story.
show like this. It's just kind of calm down here. And I think he
Yeah,
got an NFL job, like it's some like just
I
intern or
think he's in
whatever.
the Big Ten somewhere as like a
Oh, is he Big
analyst.
Ten?
I think so.
We'll look that up. We'll look that up. No, I just crack up. That was such a special time. But no, I mean it's weird. because I'm looking at this list. I mean, I feel for the Pac-12. Jiminy, Pac-12 would have been a very interesting conference this year. Oregon is a 3, Utah at 12, USC at 23, Arizona at 21. They've been very kind of an interesting, just old school vibes. Pac-12, but that's a conference that doesn't exist anymore. Oregon State and Washington State, they're both also. I mean, Oregon State was a top 20 team last year, and they don't even have a conference. And they found that agreement with the Mountain West. I mean, it's just, it'll be interesting. And I'm curious. I mean, new TV networks. That's something you and I are going to have to adjust to. Like, I can't get over Iowa State's going to play on CBS for football.
That's going to be so silly.
Never happened in my life. It's just weird. Like, that's SEC, 2:30, SEC, CBS. That's been my whole life. And now, like, they're going to be on ABC. I'm curious if ABC can keep that kind of, like, special vibe that the CBS had. I'm curious because ESPN, I don't know if they have the production quality. We'll see. They do a great job. I'm not ever disputing that. Everybody does a great job. But SEC and CBS really rang. That music and that shot of some random Southern stadium, it was impressive. And like the Big 12 game at ABC at 2:30 or the late night game, that was a special time too. So different times, Brandon Shanahan, different times.
And Brian Ferentz got hired as an analyst at Maryland.
Oh, good for him.
Yeah,
College Park is lovely this time of year. I'm sure that's a nice little six-figure salary still for Brian. Don't you worry, ladies and gentlemen. He's finding a way.
Yeah, he's not going hungry. That's for sure.
No, I'm not. He probably still has his house in Iowa City. I can about guarantee it.
That's disgusting. Who would choose to live at that place?
Well, Brendan, I ask myself the same thing, but you and we just don't get it. I guess we're just we're just outsiders. We just don't get it.
And
oh my gosh!
Like quick Iowa City slander. Like everything that you like about Iowa City, just go to Chicago. It's everything likable about there except more, and you don't have to live. You don't have to see so much black and yellow. Like if you ever talk to somebody who loves Iowa City, they describe Chicago, and it's like but it's not.
Yeah.
It's not actually Chicago. Just go to Chicago. If that's what you like about it.
I'll say right now, Brendan, hot take that's accurate. Iowa City is the only town in the state of Iowa that feels like a coast, like East Coast city, like a city that's not in the state of Iowa.
For sure, it's got a different.
It's a different vibe. I don't mind the town itself. I really don't. Despite the awfulness of that university, downtown is nice. I mean it. Like, I'm not joking with you. I think it's a fine area, but it's such a different vibe. You're right. Like, and there's a reason they get a lot of Chicago kids to come to Iowa City. I mean, they've got a ton of out-of-state kids that come in. Not that they don't have a bunch of in-state kids too, but that's a different. I mean, Iowa State too. It's more of just a really nice rural town. That's Ames.
It's Ames. It's Iowa.
It's not the most exciting, not the most exciting place on earth. But like you feel good there. You feel safe there. In fact, I met a guy, Twins game last week, that his little kid was wearing an Iowa State polo. It's a nice shirt, kid, and I guess I'm too fat right now, Brandon. The guy thought I played football for Iowa State. I'm like, no, nice. Not even close. No, I know I look like, for some reason, I look built. I had Taco John's will do that to you. No, it's just interesting. It's just interesting though that he was just talking. It's like, it's amazing. Like he said, midnight, 1 a.m. I could go for a jog. He said, but what's wilder is that like women could go for a jog too and not feel like something was going to happen to them in Ames. I'm like, that's pretty amazing. Like that doesn't happen in a lot of places. So it's just a nice town. Obviously, a lot of former athletes and people who have gone there have really enjoyed it, including my own immediate family. They've all gone there. So it's a great place. It's home of Olympic champion Tyrese Halliburton, who might have not done anything, but as his tweet said, when you do nothing on the group project, still get an A. Held up that gold medal. That was peak Twitter right there, Brandon Shanahan.
Well, it's funny because I mean, all the last 12 to 24 months I've had shoved down my throat on the internet as an Iowa women's basketball player, and she didn't make the Olympics. But yeah, Tyrese Halliburton, makes the men's
Mm,
team, wins a gold medal, and it's like, oh well,
mm.
he didn't play all that much. Like, well, he was on the team. He got a
Still
medal.
made it. He did still make the team. Like, do you know how hard it is to make an Olympic basketball team? Any nation, not just the U.S. especially. Have you seen the talent in the U.S.?
Yeah.
Never in my life did I think Tyrese Halliburton would make a Olympic team. You got me on that one, no question. But I'm proud of him. What do I run? I saw him play in college, Brandon. I mean, good night.
Yeah, now an Olympic champion.
Now an Olympic champion. How on earth did Iowa State not win one tournament game with him in 2 years? We went 12 and 20 his last year there. How is
Yeah,
that
that's tough.
possible?
Yeah, I feel like
Oh
him.
man, the
I feel
Chrome
like he's
era
the
was
kind of guy
tough.
that he just kind of carries it, but not quite, I guess. That's tough.
I get is not, but no, he's a heck of a player. I'm proud of Tyrese. Congratulations to him. The U.S. men's national basketball team, that was a heck of a game. Steph Curry went off, and to the women's team too. Congratulations, quite a nice performance from them. I didn't see the women's final, but what a wild ending that was with that French woman's foot on the line on
Unreal.
that last three. That was insane. That was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it ended like that.
And I just want to throw this out there. That women's team, yeah, they took care of business. They didn't need anybody else who didn't make the team. That team was just fine. Just fine as
Did you see
constructed.
that there were a lot of U.S. people that were high key rooting against that team though.
Oh, yeah, without a
They did
doubt,
not
dude.
want the U.S. women's team. There's no question. Like that team was high key hated by still I'll say
Yeah,
minority of the country, but a loud minority.
because they don't care about women's basketball. They don't care about the United States. All they care about is Caitlin Clark. That's all they care about. She could have suited up for the Soviet Union making their Olympic debut, and they'd be like, "Hey,
That's it.
that's our girl.
That's it.
That's our girl. Superstar." That's why people look at the TV ratings. Look at the TV ratings. He's bringing in dollars. Yeah, right.
I guess they'd be using the term comrade.
Comrade
Comrade
Clark.
Clark.
That's right.
What a name.
That name does kind of go hard.
What a name that is.
God
Good
forbid
God.
she ever runs for any
She
type
should
of
have,
political office. I'll
if
be
she,
pushing that agenda.
if, you know what though, she could run with that, and I actually kind of respect her. She said, "I'm Comrade Clark." I'm like, respect. I don't even know if I could be mad. I think I just burst out laughing. So,
I mean, if there's anybody who could turn Iowa blue, it's Comrade Caitlin.
that sounds like a great like political attack ad. Comrade.
For sure. Like I'm just picturing it in like Donald Trump's accent.
No, I could see that. Yeah, no, it's huge, huge.
Huge.
No, it's just it's interesting though, and I think going all the way back to kind of just the top 25 poll. I mean, there are some interesting teams, and I'm keeping an eye. I mean, how do we not keep an eye on some of our former Big 12 teams? I'm going to keep an eye on Texas, of course I am. I'm going to keep an eye on Oklahoma. You and I, Brandon, for 3 years, and I think fans, especially on Oklahoma, have thought we're going to get killed and slaughtered in the SEC. That was the narrative in 2021. That was the narrative in 2022 for both schools. Texas had a great year last year. In fact, they picked the right time to get good again, like right as they're entering their SEC era. And OU is at least competent again. They were heavily competitive under Lincoln. Lincoln flies, to his private plane out to USC. Venables struggled to get going initially, but they're building something.
That was a really good year.
Teams are building a culture that they did. Like they were very competitive again. They are gonna. I'm curious how those two teams will do. Of course, I keep it. I keep an eye on everybody, but they both could be serious players. In Texas, especially Texas, has national championship aspirations. Like they genuinely think they can make it.
And I guess what I would be worried about is, as somebody who's peddling the Big 12's agenda, is that they come in and flop. They're like, oh, these are just Big 12 teams. But I wouldn't be rooting for Texas as much, but if Oklahoma comes in, and this year's going to be rough for them. They got such a bad draw, especially compared to Texas, but such a bad draw. But if they come in and run the show, I mean, we're claiming a chunk of that. Like, yeah, these are what Big 12 teams do.
Yeah.
They just come in and they run the
Yeah, I
SEC.
mean,
Doesn't matter. Just means
in
more.
fact, it is fascinating. You know what? I just am relooking at this poll right now, Brandon. The 4 former Big 12 teams are now in the SEC, all ranked. Texas at 4, Mizzou at 11, OU at 16, A&M at 20.
That's right. Big 12 runs the
Interesting.
SEC. I don't know what to tell you, Drew Russell.
Is that the narrative? Maybe that's the narrative we run with. And I'm curious, like, A&M I don't think is very good. A&M I think is trash. I hate A&M. That is the worst ranking of them all. I'll just say it right now. Let's just get that out of the way.
I did my SEC.
And Mizzou will be interesting.
Did my SEC preview. I think I texted A&M going 5-7. And
Good.
that 5th win was an upset against Texas to keep Texas out of the SEC championship game. So
that actually would be great. You know what? That would actually be kind of funny. That's a game where I just sheer hate watch, and whoever suffers more, that makes me smile. Like that's just a sheer hate watch for me.
And I think if you're a Texas A&M fan, if I'm like, hey, would you rather go like 8-4 and lose to Texas, or would you rather go 5-7 and beat them, keep them out of the SEC championship game? I think they might take option B. They hate Texas as much as I think any school hates another school. It's unbelievable.
I agree with that. You're not going to have me fight that, Brandon Shanahan. You're not going to have me fight that remotely. I think it's interesting. I think we just got to play the game, Brandon. And I mean, we'll have our full team previews coming up in the near future. But it's weird. Like, I'm just thinking, like, boy, all these conferences have loaded teams. So, like, okay, there's no longer a Pac-12. It's 4 conferences now.
Yeah.
And the energy is very different between 2 and 2 conferences, where the SEC, they know who they are. There's no doubt. The Big Ten right now knows who they are. I think the Big 12 is learning, they're knowing to know who they are. They know who they are in a lot of sports. Basketball, no question. But football, they're going to learn, but, like, there's high potential. ACC is a fascinating conference because they're top heavy. Florida State's still a great team. Notre Dame's still a power. Even Clemson, despite Dabo and his chaos, they're still good. But after that, what do they got? They need NC State to go up from 24. Louisville and Virginia Tech are receiving votes. Can they find a way to take a necessary next step? Virginia Tech will be a team to keep an eye on. I think they could potentially be a top 20 team at the end of the season. So
yeah, they're getting a lot of buzz, that's for sure.
No question. I read about them, and they usually are pretty terrible offensively. They got a good QB back, and he's got some juice. So we'll see. Arkansas is wild. Bobby Petrino might be hijacking Sam Pittman's season. I mean, that's must-watch TV from me weekly. It's Arkansas. So I don't know. Every college football season is bizarre, Brandon, but this one just feels like it truly, between all the network changes on TV, the 12-team football playoff, all the conference realignment, there is no question about it. This is a new era of college football and a very, biggest new era since 2014. It just feels different going into this season. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing. Like, I think the potential is very good, but we'll see what the fan interest is. I think it's going to be good in the 2 conferences. Can the Big 12 draw big attendances as well? That's something I'm keeping an eye on.
And last thing before we move on from the poll, Utah did get 2 votes in the top 5 from John Wilner, who, I don't know if you remember, but was the key person peddling the agenda that the Big 12, no Pac-12 teams were going to go to the Big 12. So shout out to John. And then
John.
Eric Hansen from InsideNotreDameSports.com also had them at 5. So some love for the Big 12 there at the upper echelons. That feels crazy to me, but I'll take it.
Utah's a good program. Like, they are a really good program. They could easily make a run. I know their fan base is already hated, which is great. We need some hate in the Big 12. Like, if they have really gone out of their way to be hateable, I kind of respect it almost.
That's right.
You kind of have to just respect it, that they're willing to just wear that badge with pride. They're a good team, though. There's a reason that there's expectations for them to win the conference, to be the representative in the college football playoff, and they'd be a good representative for the conference if they live up to their expectations this year. And I think that them, along with Oklahoma State and Kansas State, are the 3 to keep an eye on. But Kansas is interesting. I'm keeping an eye on Arizona, and I do think three pretty interesting wild cards. I think I like the 8 that are on this poll. Iowa State is a very interesting team. I mean, I'm a fan, so of course I'm going to be intrigued. But
I really like what they're
boy, if
bringing.
things play their way, Brandon, I mean, they could really put together a really interesting season. And same with West Virginia. They're off a 9-win year. Can they build upon that? Can our boy Neal keep on doing what he does? And then Dion, how are you not going to keep an eye on Colorado, where you have QBs and ripping their offensive lines and saying they don't block, and then Dion just ripping all the local reporters for doubting him. Like, that's content. Like, we're gonna have to have a specialized Colorado segment, because that it's a content factory out in Boulder.
Unbelievable stuff.
It's incredible. I mean, it really is. Dion really delivers. I'll give him this, Brandon. Colorado was kind of an afterthought to a lot of people in the world of college football. You have to watch. There's no way you can't watch. Like, they've marketed themselves too well. Like, you're kind of intrigued how it's going to play out every single week.
Yeah, you're absolutely right there. I mean, I don't think it's a good thing, but I mean, if you're an admin at Colorado or somebody on the fiscal side, and accountants, I'm sure accountants are, I mean, up to their neck in revenue. I guess that's cool, but as far as like football goes, I don't think it's good. I don't think it's good for anybody involved there, which is good for me. That's good for my agenda.
And we got to push agendas, Brandon. That's one thing you and I are never afraid to do on this podcast, is push our agendas, like Comrade Clark.
Comrade Clark.
Comrade Clark. It's getting there, ladies and gentlemen. I think, we're first full weekend is 2.5 weeks now. First full weekend of college football. If you're a real sicko, Florida State plays like in a week and a half. It's a good time to be a sports fan. We're getting there. Olympics is great. We just got to fight a little bit more, and then football is back in our living rooms, and you will not see me leave this apartment for months.
That's right.
No one will see me publicly. I'll just be a ghost. So it's an exciting time. Can't wait, Brandon Shanahan.